how's your experience with Stellar Blade?
It's pretty
Yeah, what do you
fucking
think?
good.
Jake? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I talked to you guys when I first experienced the game, I was like, I don't want this. I don't like this. I think it gets significantly better after the demo, and then it's really starts to open things up. And I was pretty hooked. I realized it was like the right blend of combat, just the right blend of challenge that just really, it got me. And that is, I mean, I'm not into the story or really anything really much else going on, but in terms of vibe and combat satisfaction, really, that's the biggest thing. That's what got me through it and kind of surprised me. And now I'm like a Stellar Blade guy. When I went into it being like, I don't know, this is the butt lady. Yeah, that might be cool. And now I'm like, yeah, man, you should play it.
Butt lady is cool.
Butt lady is cool. Yeah.
I would also say that, yeah, on a 10-point scale is an 8. I do think it's a great game with some pretty noticeable rough edges is how I keep referring to it. It's a game where I think it's the rare instance for me where my critical opinion does differ from, I don't do a separate personal score or anything, but just my level of enjoyment of it. I do think this is an 8 out of 10, but such a solid 8 out of 10 that is exactly what I was looking for out of this game. And I think I'm just really looking forward to where they could go from here with this. It's a very solid foundation that I had a lot of fun playing. I think that gets into one of the negatives of this game is just anything related to the story. Yes. It's so just derivative is the word. They're clearly drawing from Nier a lot, but not quite understanding what makes the storytelling in that game good. And that affects the plot, the characters, everything just feels, I would say even unfortunately just flat, which is in some ways almost worse than being bad, because I kind of just found myself a little bored.
Because I feel like Stellar Blade is a cool game that you'd play and then be like, yeah, it's a cool game, you can play it, go for it, whatever. And then you kind of just immediately forget about it almost because it is so absent vibes and like proper.
Wait, like
absent in vibes?
Yeah, like it doesn't have atmosphere.
Like that's, I like the vibe.
Well, see, I just agree with that. For me personally, I feel this, it really does feel like it's trying to combine all of these different things, particularly Nier Automata. Like it's trying to do a lot of Nier Automata all the time. And it's kind of like when it's not trying to just copy that, it's not really got much else going on. And like, again, it's like, would you... Yeah, so does this really kind of like pierce you and make you think, shit, man, this means something to me? I don't think it... Stellar Blade's the kind of game that means something to people.
But it doesn't need to, though, right?
Well, no, it doesn't need to, of course. But like, you know, you can play something like Bayonetta, for example, and like, you know, it's quite similar in some aspects because it's sort of character action and like.
But Bayonetta, you can make your identity. Like you can be like.
That's what I'm saying.
Be into it.
You did say you're a Stellar Blade guy, though.
So Stellar Blade guy, and the way you break it down for me, it's like. I really like the combat, and I'm like, fuck yeah, I love this combat. But I said in my video that it's not, because of the mishmash that it really is, like what you said. Is it post-apocalyptic sci-fi? Like, is it just like a sexy lady simulator? Is it Nier Automata? Like, I don't, because there's nothing else there. Like, I'm not going to put a poster on my wall of like the game, not because of her being gorgeous, but I just mean like the game itself. Like I'm not in love with the lore or the world because there isn't a world. There isn't really
exactly.
Everything about that is just so average in the way that I could see everything coming a mile away. And I found myself saying last night when they were wrapping up some plot threads, oh, that's a plot twist? I thought we knew that. I thought that was just information that we were supposed to have. All the characters are reacting like, oh my God, that's what's happening? I'm like,
they changed a couple of letters in the word native and act like the actual plot twist around it is really like mind-blowing. And I'm like, no, you signaled this a long time ago, actually. Like, you also named two of the characters Adam and Eve. Where did you think I would think this is going?
Yeah, which is just, I don't know, it's not so egregious that it ever distracted me, though, because it is the kind of game where you get like, you know, a 10-minute series of cutscenes that you're walking between, but then you get several hours of gameplay, so it never feels like it's completely dragging the experience down.
it's just because I'm seeing all this stuff as I was playing it, I was distracted by how much it was Nier Automata. And I don't actually think they went, other than trying to copy that, they weren't really trying to create their own thing. They weren't trying to create their own unique story. They weren't trying to create their own unique characters. They a lot of the time weren't trying to create their own unique music. And so for that reason, yeah, I actually liked the game for sure. Like I played it, finished it, you know, combat was great. I actually like some of the open worldy stuff. It's very low key, but it worked for me.
Yeah.
But I just feel nothing for Stellar. I have no affection for Stellar Blade because I think in absence of those things, you just finish a game and then you walk away from it. It's like, you're right. It doesn't have to, but it feels like this is the kind of game that should.
Yeah, that's kind of the takeaway I have here is like, this feels like it was the game they always wanted to make. And when they did get inspired by Nier, it was because they saw that like, oh man, I wish we made that. And so they did. And I think, like you said, that's sweet, actually. That's it's derivative. And again, that the critical brain goes, okay, when that's a problem. Really, my heart says, no, I'm glad that a team's out there, especially from South Korea, saying, hey, we saw a game we really like. We want to make a game like that. We want to put it on console just like they did. And they did it. And they accomplished everything. And here it is. And it's a fun game to play. To be that's win, win, win. That's awesome.
But I think in addition to that, the fact that it is just cribbing so much from Nier Automata kind of annoys me. And I'm like, yeah, I get why this is good. I get because obviously they're really inspired by that work. And I understand that completely. I think, they obviously wanted to make something that was loving homage to that inspiration point. But I think there's a point where it goes too far and it's kind of just like, all right, how about you do some of your own stuff though? You know what I mean? And it definitely did that on the gameplay side. But on the non-gameplay side, it was too much for me. So
yeah, I think that for me, it was a lot of like, I don't always need to have a big epiphany about something. I can just be having fun killing stuff. And I went with that. But it's interesting that it almost got me thinking what you were saying before, there are sometimes movies on Netflix that are these massive budget, incredible productions with all this power behind it. And you watch it and you are entertained and then you never think about it again.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I think about the kind of the story and that being the negative, it's very hard to write a game as well as Nier Automata. That's something that really stands out and people love it because it's like, man, they really knew what they were doing. And the gap feels so wide because the comparison point is to something like that. I think if you compare this to most video game stories or whatever, it's like, it doesn't, as long as it doesn't get in the way too much, that's not going to be a problem. And it seems to me like that's going to end up being the case, at least as far as I feel about it at this moment. And inoffensive is maybe is the worst thing I would say about it. It's like, it's an inoffensive story. It doesn't blow my socks off, but it's also not frustrating me or making me pull my hair out or something like that.
But I think you're right, Jake, that sometimes you can have popcorn movies, and I feel the same way about popcorn games. But I think that Ralph's issue with it, even though again, it's still something you played and finished, right? Makes sense to me because you feel like it's trying to pretend it has more than that. Like a game like Vampire Survivor is technically a popcorn game, but that stuck with me pretty hard because the popcorn is just trying to be popcorn and it tastes so good. Whereas I get it feels odd when you feel like something is trying to pretend like it's something else, but not executing on it well. It can be more off-putting because they even tried.
I would say part of the problem is that the voice I put in English voice acting because my rule for reviewing games is I play with the defaults and what would an average player do if they're just thumbing to the main start of the game. But I play with English voice acting and the stilted voice acting does not help that story at all. I do not understand what they were thinking with Adam, especially because he just sounds like a guy they pulled off the street. Yeah,
I think with a lot of the voice acting, it's just like I said at the top, it's flat and in a way that I personally find inoffensive, but also doesn't help the fact that so much of it is just kind of boring. It feels a little running through the motions. I think it may be just a direction problem on that because I think it felt, especially reading the cast at the end of the game, I feel like this is a lot of unknowns being cast.
Yeah,
or
I think
just
so. I didn't recognize any names.
yeah. If nothing else, I didn't recognize any of those names. But I think some of the voice actors are good. Like I think Eve's voice actor actually does. Like there's some talent there, but maybe some of the line reads they should have done another take, or just they should have directed her a bit differently. That's what a lot of voice acting is nowadays. It comes down to direction. I think that was a part of it where they messed up a little bit.
This reeks to me as someone who has worked like as a producer at a Japanese studio, like for foreign language developers, when they pick line reads without actually fully understanding what the intonation is.
Yeah.
And like they're like, oh, this sounds good. It's like, no, these don't sound good together.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.